Noche UFC is in the books. And I'm sure it looked pretty cool on my TV because these eyes witnessed it. And Joe Rogan, who was inside the Sphere, says every UFC should be at the Sphere going forward. What did you guys think? However, react. Fada, you go first. You still buzzing?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the fights were awesome up until probably the co-main and main event. I understand they were a little bit slower, but the sphere, the graphics, everything about it was a lot of fun. It was very cool. It kept my eyes peeled. Now, don't forget, my side of the world, we're watching it in the middle of the night, so obviously, it's always hard to stay awake for these pay-per-views, but. I had my eyes peeled. I was interested to see the movies in between. The show was really cool. I know a lot of people were mocking. I don't know what they were expecting, but for me, I think it lived up to the expectations. It was a lot of fun. The fights were awesome. We had some fight of the year contenders, a couple of them. And then main and co-main maybe didn't deliver the way fans expected it to, but we'll dive into those fights later on in terms of each fighter's strategy. But overall, I thought the night of fights were fun. I thought it was really cool. I thought the UFC executed well, and I think they should be very proud of the end result. I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. All right, Danny Segura, what were your thoughts on the historic event?
I thought it was sick in terms of like the Sphere. The whole show was amazing. The fights, I think we expected a little bit more, especially for the main and co-main event. But outside of that, I thought it was a spectacular show. Kudos to the UFC for trying something new. I mean, they're a pioneer in this. We talk about how, things are changing for the consumers due to technology and all that. Well, sporting events are changing too. And I think this is the beginning of maybe more in the future and just like the way we consume sports. I think this is part of it. This is part of the evolution. So I thought it was great. I can't believe there's some people online criticizing it, but I thought it was dope. I think it's one of the coolest events I've ever seen, and I wasn't even there in person. I'm sure the experience of being there must have been brutal. So I'm all in for it. I thought it was pretty sick. UFC at the Sphere. Hopefully there's more of those down the line.
That sounds like a message to Scott Wade in the chat. He wasn't really overwhelmed. Mike Bond, you've been to stadium shows and you've been to big shows all over the world. All right, but how did you compare this one to that one?
Yeah, so I wasn't there obviously, but I enjoyed the experience watching at home like quite a bit, honestly. It started a little slow in terms of, all the spectacle side of it. You could tell early on they were having a little bit of audio issues, some issues with the camera shots and things like that, but that smoothed out within a couple fights. And by the time we got to the main card and, the movie, as they put it, really started to come with those clips and the stories and stuff. It was all really spectacular. It wasn't overbearing. Like I think the movie length, Farah and I talked about this a little bit on the preview show, like 90 seconds was perfect. I think if these went 3, 4, 5 minutes, it would have been pretty dragged on. I mean, the card was pretty long as it was with all the stuff that happened there. I don't recall many times where the main event ended at nearly 2 a.m. Eastern time. So that was a long, long night in that regard. But yeah, I mean, I've said it pretty much since this was announced. Anytime the UFC tries something different and unique, outside of the norm. You mentioned those stadium shows I've been to, George. Sometimes if you're watching at home, you can't even tell if there's 40,000 people in a stadium compared to 16,000 in an arena stateside or something. So this felt different. It was unique. It was special. And I really enjoyed it. And I think Danny Segura might have had one of the best tweets of the night saying this is as close to real life Mortal Kombat as you're going to get. And that just really stuck with me because those backdrops of the fight were sick.
It was, man. I was really blown away. And then the stories, 90 seconds. You guys are right. Perfect length. I liked it. Mike, I want to stay with you, though. This was a success. I mean, it did well at the gate. Overwhelmingly, I know, like I said, a few people maybe weren't overwhelmed, but for the most part, a lot of people really, really enjoyed it. Those that were there in person were blown away. Will we see it again? What are your thoughts? Just knowing how Dana White has changed his mind before.
Yeah, deep in my gut, I do think we'll see one again. I don't know if it's going to be in 6 months or in 6 years, but I do think they'll go back in there. There'll probably be another opportunity with this contract they have with MGM, either to get out of it, as Dana White kind of alluded to at the post-fight press conference. There could be a new arena being built in Las Vegas in the coming years. You probably know more of that than I do, George, what could be in the works, but it seems like maybe they're thinking outside the box of Las Vegas venues besides this T-Mobile arena deal that they've been in for several years now. So I think it's definitely possible in the future. I don't think it's going to be a routine occurrence, just given the financial impact needed. Like I think we had talked a little bit about before, could maybe a second visit back be more or less expensive, just knowing that, like, them knowing what they have to do, being able to budget things a little bit better. But if you're doing a different show, a different theme, you're going to have to rebuild all these graphic things from scratch. And that's what I assume is the most expensive part. So I don't really see ways to make this incredibly cheaper moving forward. So I do think it's going to be a special, rare thing. And yeah, I mean, it was a success in all fronts. I'd be curious to know how someone who bought tickets, like when they went right on sale at the beginning and paid maximum prices without things being chopped down, how they felt about it, whether they felt it was worth their money. That would be kind of the only thing. But sitting at home, this being the price of any other UFC pay-per-view, I don't see how you could be overly disappointed, maybe besides the final two fights, which we'll get into.
Yeah, and what Mike's talking about is there are rumors of an NBA team coming to Las Vegas. It would be a little bit south of the Strip, so kind of like on the Mandalay Bay side, not the Stratosphere side, if that makes sense to anybody. It'd be even further south of that, and of course, it'll be state of the art. So who knows if that's what he was alluding to. I just hope that maybe like the BMF. I think we had the BMF, and then 4 years later we had it again. I don't think I want to wait 4 years, maybe 2 years. But I'd really love for them to go back. Hopefully they can bridge something with MGM. Hey, look, we'll promote your businesses on one of the fucking stories or something. But we got to do it again, man. It was dope. Only for selfish reasons, is I want to go to that one. So I don't know. One of you two will have to, or one of you three, or all three of you will have to host the next watch along, because I really want to be at the next one. Those guys, especially Rogan and Cormier, sold it to me. But let's talk about the fights. Fada, your reaction to Dvalishvili beating O'Malley. Like, we have a new world champion. It's in the history books. It's the most exciting division, I believe, in all of MMA. But we're all just kind of like, congrats, Merab. We're, no big deal. Like, we're all just kind of moving about our business. But what was your reaction to the fight and Merab's performance?
May have lost her.
Let's go to Danny Segura right now while we get Fada back. Go ahead, Danny.
I think she's back. I don't know.
Oh, she's back. Okay, Fada, did you hear me, or you want to go on talk about Merab's performance?
Sure. Yeah, I can go now. Apologies for that. Yeah. I think both guys were very tentative. I think Merab did what Merab does, but he was a little more tentative than I expected him to. But then when you see O'Malley hurt him in round 5, you understand why. He knew how he knows how dangerous Sean O'Malley can be. He saw what he did to his best friend Aljamain Sterling. So I think the tentativeness from Merab's side is understandable. I just expected him to ramp up the aggression a little bit more. Like when I look at that performance and the game plan and the blueprint that you expect him to go through, you think of Bilal and Leon Edwards. Well, Bilal was kind of like walking through the fire. I expected Merab to try and walk through the fire a little bit more. He was kind of circling around a little bit more than I would have wanted him to. But then again, I referred to that round 5 body kick that had him hurt. So you kind of understand why he was being the way he was. He respected O'Malley's power a lot and his precision. But Merab did what Merab does. I don't want to take away too much from his performance. He landed, I think, 6 takedowns. He had 10 minutes of control time. It was a very Merab-like fight, and he wasn't really in trouble except for that 5th round when he kind of got hurt, but he was in firm control of the fight. So, yeah, I'll give it a 7 out of 10 maybe, but Merab did what Merab does.
Yeah, I like that. You're right. And Bilal was walking through some fire, and he almost paid for it at the end, but that's what the fans want. You got to bridge the two. And even that one wasn't called the barn burner. Danny, let's go to you now. Your reaction to that world title victory by Merab Dvalishvili.
I expected the result, but not how it went down. I had Merab winning. I thought he was going to win a decision. More or less, I expected this fight. However, I did expect more resistance from O'Malley. I do wonder if he was injured or if he was sick entering that fight. Keep in mind, I believe it was in the 5th round. I don't know if you guys caught on to it, but his corner man, Tim, said something like, oh, it's almost over. It's almost done. Or we're almost done with this, something like that. And it just seemed like he had no energy. It just seemed like there wasn't really any urgency to make a big statement. He looked flat, as Dana White said on the presser. Like, he didn't look dialed in. When Sean O'Malley's fighting, we usually get a different sense in the fight. Sort of the aura around him changes, the air around him changes. There's a certain locked in feeling that we get when we see him fight. I didn't really get that. I kind of felt like he was on autopilot, and Merab took advantage of that and won a pretty dominant decision. So not surprised with the result, but I am surprised on how we got there. I expected the fight to be a little bit more complicated for Merab.
Mike, your reaction to the title-winning victory by Merab Dvalishvili, and also to you, are we being too harsh on a guy that was just brilliant in his execution of a smart game plan?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you expected if you were thinking Merab Dvalishvili was going to win this fight. I think this pretty much went to a T of what you could believe he would try to go in there and do. He probably struck more than even some of us thought he would in this fight. I mean, 6 takedowns is pretty low compared to what he gets in some of these other fights. He had a chance to get to double digits and break GSP's all-time record, but he'll have to settle with second place, and I think that record's probably going down in the next fight or two here. But yeah, I mean, this is what he had to do to win. There was a slim chance of him knocking out O'Malley, obviously. Submission, maybe if Sean made like a big mistake and gave up a bad position. But I think this was always kind of destined to be a decision for Merab Dvalishvili if he was going to win. So I don't know. I can't really hate on it too hard. I think more of the judgment goes on Sean O'Malley's side, actually. I mean, I don't know what his game plan in there was, what the execution was. It's like, was he just relying on basically a puncher's chance in this fight? You would think someone of his caliber, a champion, would have a deeper, more layered game plan than that. But it didn't really seem like he had too many answers there. And when the fight was clearly in a hole for him and he had to do something spectacular, like Danny said, his corner was telling him, this is almost over with, not you need to go out there and kill this guy if you want to leave tonight with your title because you're down 3-1 or 4-0 right now. So the energy just wasn't there. I don't want to take away from Merab's win by indicating there was anything wrong with Sean coming in. I think we just, quite frankly, saw him get exposed a little bit. I mean, you could see shades of this in the fight with Piotr Jan in terms of like the wrestling, and it's someone who could mix it up on him. He did fantastic against Aljamain Sterling, who was clearly a little shook by just the whole moment and what he needed to do to really get in there. He didn't have Merab's confidence with the striking and kind of mixing it up. That was Sean's biggest win, but we still didn't know. I mean, had only been a couple fights from him coming into this, like against this style of fighter, and we were going to get all the answers. And the answers were, he is not at that level with his takedown defense, with his get-ups, and his ability to still execute his striking while having that significant grappling threat still on his mind. So he's got a lot of work to do, and you just have to wonder now if this is kind of the end of Sean O'Malley's moment in the sun at a championship level, because I know he posted the video of him in the singlet wrestling backstage after the fight. I don't know if there's any amount of work he could do in this lifetime to catch up to Merab's grappling game. And you would say the same about probably Umar Nurmagomedov, who could potentially be the next champion. And then there's still several other tough fights out there. So yeah, a lot of questions about Sean O'Malley's future and whether he can ever get back to this level of being a champion.
And he was close to superstardom, and notice no one's clamoring for that immediate rematch either. Not that he had the bulk of title defenses to lay out, that argument. Danny, was this more about? So go ahead, and Fada, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in on the body work that O'Malley did later on. I don't know if it's something his corner said, because I don't know if I caught that, or if it's an adjustment he decided to make on his own. But I thought that should have been his game plan earlier on, because he was obviously trying to maybe try to how do you slow down Merab, right? So maybe that sounds stupid, but maybe he was trying to attack him in a different way, because you don't want to get too overzealous with the striking not to get taken down. So I thought the body work was great. It obviously paid dividends because he was able to hurt him. I just wonder why he didn't implement it earlier. And I do want to give Sean O'Malley a little bit of credit, because I didn't know if his gas tank could last for 5 rounds, especially with mixing in the grappling. That was a big question mark, and obviously he showed that he has the power to carry on in the championship rounds. But again, Merab did what, if you envisioned Merab winning, that was the way you envisioned him doing it. So you can't kind of take away. I just expected a little bit more aggression, but I can't say that his performance was not a good one. He did exactly what Merab does, and he executed his game plan pretty perfectly.
There you go. All right. And Danny, I was going to ask you, was Dvalishvili really just that good, or was O'Malley off? And I hate hearing that O'Malley was overrated or anything like that. I don't like hearing that, because to go like 19-1, honestly, you got to be a pretty damn good fighter. But what were your thoughts of just Saturday night?
As I mentioned, yeah, I don't want to take anything away from Merab. again, I had him to win the fight. I picked him to win the fight by decision, but I do feel like we didn't get a prime locked in version of Sean O'Malley in there. I think we've all seen, even in the Peter Yan, as Mike mentioned earlier, like, yeah, sure, he was taken down, but look how active he was from the bottom. How many times was he trying to get up? How much resistance he put on the takedown defense. Now, obviously, Peter Yan is not Merab Dvalishvili. Dvalishvili is much superior in that area, but I don't know. He just kind of looked off that night. He looked flat, as Dana White mentioned. So, again, not to take away anything from Merab, I think a fully trained, prepared version of Sean O'Malley in there would have probably seen the same fate. However, the way the fight looked would have been much differently. He just kind of looked like he was, I don't want to say he gave up, but he just wasn't in there that night. So we'll see what the next few fights hold for him. We'll see if this is an indication of something much bigger. I hope it's maybe just a single instance, because he is, one of the biggest stars, if not the biggest active star in the UFC. So having him winning and success is obviously a good thing for the sport. But yeah, man, I would say one of the worst performances he's had in the UFC, if not the worst.
Yeah. Mike Bond, this is right down your wheelhouse. You kind of already told us Umar Nurmagomedov is probably next for Dvalishvili. Unless you got a wild card for us, tell us that and tell us what's next for O'Malley. You're muted, Mike.
Sorry. Yeah, I think it's got to be Umar. He's the easy choice in my mind. I know Davidson Figueiredo's out there and people are making campaigns for him, especially Merab. But yeah, it's got to be Umar to me. He's got the undefeated record. He's got the name. He's got the style. You see a lot of people out there just saying he does everything Merab does, but he just does it better. So when someone's saying that about the champion, I feel like it's their time to get that. He's got the name. He could do something to kind of carry this division if he's able to win that belt and make it a little more star-studded. Probably the next best thing you could ask for out of a champion in terms of like the clout he brings besides Sean O'Malley. So yeah, I think they're going to do that fight. And I hate to put it this way too, but I don't think Dana White and the UFC are overly in love with Merab or him being in this position as champion. So if they feel that he wants him, they want him out of there, I think they probably think Umar is the biggest threat to do that.
Yeah, and what about for O'Malley, Mike? What would you suggest there? Tell us, from the pieces that you do on Sunday, you do an excellent job of unpacking what could be next for each fight, or who do you like Figgy for him if they pair up the Nurmi with Merab?
I don't hate it. I actually said the two options that I like are either Henry Cejudo, because there's lots of baggage that comes with that fight. Those two have been chirping at each other for quite a long time now.
This is true.
Sean did the whole thing with his podcast with Usman leading up to the fight, and it's just a lot is being said there. And I think if you want to find out if Sean O'Malley can make improvements or defeat this style of wrestler, why no better choice than to show your improvements against an Olympic champion in Henry Cejudo, who might be a little bit past his expiration date in terms of his prime, but he's still got something left in the tank there in terms of his name value. And I think that's a fight you could definitely sell for the UFC, and it would have some good heat behind it. If not that, I said it's got to be Jose Aldo, whether he wins or loses against Mario Bautista at UFC 307. I think that would be a fantastic fight. O'Malley versus Aldo. That would be a sensational striking battle.
Right on. All right, Fada, I'm going to come to you here for the co-main event, but I do want to get to some comments here in the chat. Folks, if you leave a comment or a question, the better ones obviously get on the show. Big Ben says, I think the Sphere was great. The card was lackluster. Quay Stefan says, great panel. Sans goes. Oh, he's missing goes. All right. Green Bandana says, if you were parlaying Merab and Valentina, you must appreciate the main and co-main events like I did. Wow, not too many people are saying something like that, but see, money was involved. Josh Wallace says, I enjoyed the entire card. Yeah, not many knockouts, but shit, the Sphere was so freaking cool. What happened to Grasso? I don't know, but the panel's going to cover it right now. Quay Stefan says, not as cool as Fish shows. I couldn't tell you, man. I didn't even catch you too. What a lame Vegas resident I am. Bernard Kaiwu or something like that says, what's up, Junkie? Goes is chiming in as well. Brian John says, Dana's going to have to wait a bit longer for that Emmy. Wow, not as impressed. All right, we'll get to more of the Sphere in a second if we have a chance. Fada, Valentina Shevchenko, one of the all-time greats in women's MMA. 7 title defenses, waited 18 months, may have even got short into the stick in that draw last year, but she came back on a mission and she fulfilled it.
Yeah, listen, I know it wasn't the most entertaining fight. I know it might have sucked the life out of a lot of people, either in attendance or watching from home, because we had some bangers earlier on. But she's 36 years old. She lost her title. I mean, I picked Alexa. I thought the momentum was on Alexa's side. She got choked out in the first fight. Second fight was a draw. She felt like she didn't get enough credit with people thinking that she should have won. And for her to come out and make it look lopsided, show off her well-roundedness. We've known her as obviously a devastating striker, but to show off her well-roundedness, to control the fight like that, just credit to her mentality and being able to pick herself back up and become champion. I think that's the biggest thing for me. Like, maybe I'm a little more critical towards Merab in terms of the entertainment value than Valentina, even though you can argue that the Merab fight was perhaps a little more entertaining than the Valentina one. But I just want to kind of credit her for her mentality and just being able to come back. I know there was that stat of, fighters above 35 or whatnot not winning or not regaining their belt. Bilal kind of broke that, or I don't know what the exact stat is, but Valentina regaining her title, a lot of people question her motivation. She was such a dominant champion, nothing else to prove in her career, guaranteed Hall of Famer, and for her to come out and just regain her belt like that, I think she deserves a ton of credit for that. So I think for me, the most impressive part is just her mentality and her ability to bounce back and put on such a dominant performance and close the trilogy bout like that very definitively. I don't think too many people are talking about a fourth fight right now. So all credit to her. I didn't really care about how the entertainment value of her performance. I was just very impressed by everything leading into it and her ability to regain her throne.
Okay, so you're saying she closed the trilogy. They're 1-1-1, and obviously no one's clamoring for a fourth. No one's clamoring for a fourth right away. Would you like to see it down the road, or do you just want to leave it at that? And Alexa has to work her way through other ways, and possibly Valentina just dropping the belt to someone else.
I mean, I wouldn't hate a fourth fight down the line. It all depends on what happens. Now you have Manon Fiorot, who's a clear-cut number one contender. So anytime you have a clear-cut number one contender, especially that Valentina won in such definitive fashion like she did, I think that's the clear fight to make. And then in terms of Alexa, I don't know if this was going to be a next question, so I apologize if I answered it early. But maybe Alexa Rose Namajunas is out there. There are big fights for her as well. So I think,
right?
yeah, I think you move on right now. Fourth fight down line, is it impossible? I mean, we said that about Holloway and Volkanovski, and maybe not impossible. So never say never.
So I've been butchering Manon's name the whole time. Say it one more time. How do you say it with a good French accent?
Manon Fiorot.
Oh my gosh, delivery. And watch when Danny gets going on some of the Latino fighters. We got to stick with this one here. Danny, what do you think, man? Shevchenko, what we know what kind of might be next for her, but what's next for Grasso? What do we do with her? She looked demoralized out there. And the worst thing you can do to a champ is put them in a position where they might go 0-2 and everyone starts questioning their title reign and if they're legit or not. But how would you handle her?
Yeah, I almost have like the same critique that I did for the main event for this co-main event in the sense that both these fighters lost. I don't think going into it, it would have been insane to say like, oh, we're going to see two champions lose their belt. I think we understood that both Merab and Shevchenko had a really good chances here of becoming champions in Shevchenko's side, regaining the title. But yeah, again, much like O'Malley, she looked flat. She looked vastly different compared to other performances. She looked defeated, as you mentioned. You could see it on her face, like in between rounds when Shevchenko would end the round on top and, the bell would ring. She would get up and she just had this really frustrated face. Something that we haven't seen really before. I mean, we've seen her down before, but she comes out with this, again, with the Mexican spirit of no matter what's happening, I'm going to go out there and do my best and try to, win this fight and turn things around. She looked defeated early on into the fight. Again, she had a lot on her shoulders. She did a Ultimate Fighter series. She was, I don't know what the ranking will be now, but she was ranked pound for pound number one fighter in terms of the female side, et cetera, et cetera. Like, there's been a lot of responsibilities dropped on her that she didn't have prior. So I don't know if maybe that was an issue as well, but I didn't think she gave us her best performance. And she's young enough to be able to turn this around and become champion again. But certainly it was a very uninspiring showing from her part. So yeah, we'll see what's next. Now they're tied. They both have one victory and share one draw. I do think a fourth fight would be nice just to kind of settle things, but not immediately. I think we got to see Grasso fight a contender and then maybe fight for the title again.
She looked tired. She looked lost. She looked shook. And there's no such thing as halfway crooks. So yeah, man, she's got to really rebound from this horrible loss. But Mike, let's go to the featured bout. Diego Lopez defeated Brian Ortega, who also at times looked lost, but it was a pretty entertaining fight. Hell, Lopez almost took him out in the first 30 seconds. What did you think of that one?
Yeah, I thought it was a great performance. Farah and I also discussed this on the preview show and talked a little bit about how Diego is a very fast starter and Brian is a very slow starter, and that almost equaled the end of the fight. And it pretty much was the end of the fight. I mean, Brian, all credit to him for once again showing that insane durability and heart and fighting spirit that has been a defining point of his career. But it was basically just survival mode from him from that point on after getting rocked super early on with that great combo by Diego. So, yeah, man, this guy showed up and he continues to impress and rise to the challenge and do all the things you would want for someone in his position who's trying to work his way up. So, yeah, this was a huge signature win. You can make, I guess, another side of the discussion on where Brian Ortega is really at. What's his motivation? Did he have a foot out the door in this weight class with plans to move up to lightweight? All those stuff are relevant and fair things. But, Diego went out there and punched him in the face and hurt him really bad and won the fight fair and square. So, yeah, he's in line for something big. Ilia Topuria said when I interviewed him a few weeks ago that he thought he was going to be a really strong candidate for a title shot in the near future. That's definitely coming to life. I don't know what his path is right now. We assume Ilya and Max Holloway are going to fight at UFC 308. Volkanovski will fight the winner in the early quarter of next year, and then maybe someone else gets a shot after that if there's no more rematches in play. So I think Diego, maybe he weighs in as the backup in Abu Dhabi. Dana White kind of alluded to that, but I don't think he'll be getting a title shot off that unless Volkanovski gets hurt or something like that. He's probably looking at needing one more win.
Danny, would you agree with what Mike's saying based off what the UFC's kind of hinting at? Because Diego Lopez is kind of regarded as someone that's got it, and he's been popping, and he almost finished the veteran, the two-time title challenger in Brian Ortega. Not only do we have Volk waiting on the sidelines, we also got Movsar Evloev and Aljamain Sterling who are fighting at UFC 307. I don't know if one of them will make noise because they have styles where they don't really come off, they don't fly off the sheet there when they win. But what are your thoughts on handling Lopez?
I think Lopez should fight for the belt next. I know that Volkanovski is obviously a historic figure, and in normal circumstances, a champion that dominant deserves an immediate rematch, whether it's him immediately next or his next fight is the one for the title, like we saw with Israel Adesanya recently. But I got to see Diego Lopez fight for the belt, man. This is just such an exciting fighter that's been killing it. He's been doing so much for the promotion. He's blown up in this sport, really just a huge fan favorite. And you got to strike while the iron's hot. So I do feel like this fight's got to happen, him for the belt. So I wouldn't hate him being a replacement. Sure, I want to see Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. That fight is amazing. But for an option B, Topuria Lopez or Holloway Lopez, that's still a banger fight. So sign me up. Look, I think Volkanovski, again, 3 losses, right? Well, 2 consecutive losses, losing to Islam Makhachev and then Topuria. Both of them got knocked out. I don't want to see him get plugged into a title fight. I know, again, the history, I know the legacy and all that, but how about you fight somebody else and then fight for the belt? But as of now, I want to see Diego Lopez fight for the belt. That's what I want to see.
Interesting. All right, but Volk's going to come after you, Danny, for saying that one. And how about the haterade in our chat? Josh Wallace says, if Gordon Ramsay thinks it's cool, who cares what a random keyboarder thinks? I guess that's haterade towards someone else towards the top of the chat. But Azan Zaman says 4 hours for 5 fights was a tad too much. Not going to lie. And Schul's Jubilee's gas station says 1 KO, 1 sub in a card celebrating the Mexican spirit. Hey. Take it easy, all right? Some of the I know we went 2 and 4, man, or something like that, but we were throwing down in some of them fights. We still haven't even gotten to Lazy Boy. And then Hubert Kulakowski says, thoughts on Merab, 0 KO attempts and 0 submission attempts. Well, it was the game plan, and that's been discussed. I'll see if I can get to some more here. Fada, give me a
one for one on the kiss attempts, though.
Yeah. Fada, give me a highlight, please, from the rest of the card, this historic card, aside from the ones we've discussed.
Well, before I give the highlight, I just wanted to point out, because that was like listening to Volkanovski put out his reaction video, and obviously he expects to be next, but he mentioned an interim title fight with Diego Lopez if for some reason the winner of Topuria and Max Holloway can't turn around in time. That was his stipulation. He said if they can't turn around in time, if they're out for some reason, if they decided to an immediate rematch, if Holloway wins and entertains defending his BMF title, whatever could happen. If they can't turn around in a decent amount of time, he entertained an interim title with Diego Lopez. So I just wanted to add that. In terms of the highlight, I gotta go with Esteban Ribovics and Daniel Zellhuber. I mean, Daniel Zellhuber, out of all kind of the young Mexican talent that was on this card, is one of those guys that people were highlighting a lot and talking about him, having a lot of potential. And that was just an amazing fight. I don't even know how he didn't get finished there. Shout out, was it Jason Herzog? Someone correct me if I'm mistaken, but shout out to him for allowing the fight to continue and not stopping it. But he showed so much heart. But that was such an amazing fight. Fight of the year contender. I know people recency bias perhaps, but in the moment I was feeling that. So amazing fight. And just an amazing showcase of two young rising contenders. You always love to see that in a division so stacked like lightweight. And a lot of people were complaining about the name value on this card outside of the main and co-main event. So when you get the two younger guys, the two rising prospects giving you a fight like that, they kind of show you exactly why they were on that card and exactly why they had such a high billing on the main card. So that was an amazing fight.
For sure. All right. Mike Bond, how about you? What's your other highlight?
The gruesome cut opened up on Irene Aldana's face, man. That thing was so bad. I'm sure everyone has seen it a million times at this point, but holy hell, like that was one of the worst I've ever seen. Irene just posted something of her being stitched up, which is absolutely disgusting, what she looks like today. Like, yeah, that was one of the worst cuts I've ever seen in UFC history.
Did they get her a plastic surgeon at least? They didn't do it in the back, right?
I would hope so. I would hope they took her to their best person. I don't really know what they do in that situations. Maybe that's something to look into, exactly how they deal with something of that magnitude. Because like you said, George, for smaller cuts, they'll still stitch them up in the back and bring them over to the media room or whatever. That obviously, she lost the fight, so that wasn't in play regardless. But yeah, holy hell, she is so tough. We've seen this from her multiple times. I don't think you want this to be your signature look if you're Irene Aldana, just to like go through these fights where there's such bloodbaths. But she's been on the other side of it sometimes. So I guess what goes around comes around. But yeah, that thing is real bad, and that's going to leave a scar for life. So there were some other great performances, wins. I know we're talking about someone who lost here, and credit to Norma Dumont for winning the fight, even though it was opened on a headbutt, right? Or a clash of heads. So it's not like she did a legit technique to open that cut up, but she's still a good fighter and definitely a title threat at 135. So that was an important result there too.
My best to Irene, man. I hope she heals up and stay away from Merab. He'll try and get those stitches out sooner rather than later. Danny Segura, who was your highlight?
I got to go with Lazy Boy Rodriguez. 2-0 in the UFC, opened up the UFC pay-per-view main card, and that's probably one of the best comebacks I've ever seen, at least in recent years. I thought he was done in those first few seconds. When
if O'Day walks away, Danny, he might have actually gotten his hand.
Yeah. I think in that sequence, if they would have stopped that fight, I think very few people would have complained. I mean, his hands were down. He was looking somewhere else once. Oda jumped on top of him. So I think if there was a stoppage there, people would have been like, yeah, that totally should have been stopped. Yet the referee let it continue, and it worked out for Lazy Boy, because not only did he survive that sequence, but he went on to win the second and third round, which that's extremely hard to do, especially after getting tagged like that. I think this guy's going to be a superstar. I mean, he's creeping into like 1 million followers on Instagram. I know in Mexico, he's already been a very popular figure for some years. And then, this just made him even more popular. So, yeah, shouts out to Lazy Boy. Big and nice addition to the flyweight division. And in case you guys haven't checked it out, I wrote a longer feature on him pre-fight, but it still stands more or less kind of recounting his childhood and all the struggles that he's gone through and why he's connected so much with the Mexican fan base. So, yeah, just a little cheap.
Tweet that out again, Danny, and we'll all retweet it, man. Great piece. And that guy owned the press conference and his walkout. Everyone was into it. I think he had got the momentum from the press conference. He had that it factor, man. And if he actually would have finished O'Day like real quick, like O'Day almost finished him, I'm telling you, man, he would have really popped. I like that guy. He really impressed me. Mine, not that anyone asked, because I'm obviously just the guy that distributes. They're the ones that are dunking at the panelists. These guys are awesome. But hey, give O'Dea Osborne one more shot, because even though his back was to the wall and he's lost like 3 out of 4 or something like that, he actually went out there and fought, and he fought a good 15 minutes. And give a shot to Shirez as well. I mean, a beautiful jab. The way it's supposed to be thrown, boom, boom, straight punches. It's just that Joshua Van has a lot of heart, and he came back. But I hope they give Shirez another shot, because I think he's also lost 203. So I know it's weird, but those were my highlights. The 2 guys impressed, even though they lost. But guys, we got to move on. Let me give a couple quick comments here. Joseph Costello says, how long is their contract with MGM? We're really not sure, but if Dana's taking a look, you never know, right? MMA Events Vlog says, Sphere presentation was awesome, was priced out of attending, but great on TV. And yes, that's something they should pay attention to. Clay Stefan Ribovich and so Hubert was on fire. Brian John says the prelims were great. Azan says MGM, T-Mobile are not from the same contract, right? No, they're not. MGM allowed Dana to do the Sphere because of some negotiations, some stuff that's been going on behind the scenes, where Dana has stated that it hasn't been pleasant working for MGM, but they are under contract and they go back to that.